Hello and welcome to Back to Basics. I'm Lady B and I am your host and volunteer with AARP Arizona. AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. With a nationwide presence, AARP strengthens communities and advocates for what matters most to the more than 1 million Americans 50 plus and their families. This includes health, security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. AARP also produces the nation's largest circulation publications, AARP the Magazine and AARP Bulletin. In the months of November and December, AARP will help you navigate the complicated healthcare system. Caregivers are frequently frustrated by their healthcare system, from Medicare, insurance, and care coordination to inadequate healthcare staffing and medication management. We know helping your loved one navigate their medical needs is hard, and AARP is your wise friend and fierce defender and is here to provide support and guidance. AARP can help you with resources, expert content, and tools. Visit us at the URL that you will see there across the screen. Today, we're going to be talking to you about navigating the holidays and eating and some of the rest with Coach SheriAnne. Make sure you let us know where you're here from. And if you have any questions or comments, be sure to put them there in the chat and we'll get to them. If she's not able to get to them during the segment here, she'll get back to you later. Okay. Thank you. Hey there, Coach SheriAnne. How are you?
Good, Lady B. How about you?
I won't complain. I am hanging in here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, we're having our small wintry weather right now. It's really nice, so I'm enjoying it. But yeah, so please let us know where you're tuning in from. It is wonderful to see faces and names pop up from all over the nation. So I always love that. So please do that. But yeah, we're entering into one of the busiest times of the year, it seems like, and navigating all those holiday parties and get-togethers and whatnot can be a little stressful for some people. And so, yes, I have some tips today to help manage that because it's about a 5 to 7 week window, depending upon when people start having. I mean, I know of holiday parties that are happening this weekend, and then stuff will continue into the new year. So it's a good solid 7 weeks usually for some people. Do you go to a lot of holiday parties, Lady B?
I do. I do. Yeah,
Good.
I do. And you're right, navigating some of that with the eating and just the socializing and the stress of all the parties. To whom do you say yes? To whom do you say no? Can you make this? And should you even have one? It's a lot to it. So I'm looking forward to what you have to share.
Yes. Well, so I like to try to help people when they're, worried about the holiday eating part. Just put the focus on the social connections that that you're focused on and making those social connections with new friends, old friends, family. And so make that be the focus rather than the food. But going in with some tools on your tool belt will help in navigating just because usually it's a smorgasbord of food. And if you're really working on being healthy, it tends to be one of those times you're like, I don't know what to do. So, but yeah, so we're going to talk about just balancing, and I call it budget balancing, but it's not just food budget balancing, but it's also emotional budget balancing. And so just don't deprive yourself and budget wisely, and so it's just have some good balance when you're going into a party and you'll feel so much better. But eating healthy is going to help reduce a lot of issues. It's going to help reduce your chance of gaining weight, which a lot of people do during the holidays. It's going to reduce your risk of high blood pressure, cholesterol, your risk of type 2 diabetes because the amount of sugar that's consumed this time of year is off the charts. It's going to decrease your chances of all kinds of chronic illnesses. It's going to help maintain healthy bones. So there's a lot of reasons why you want to manage your eating, and I struggle with healthy eating. I try to use the word eating smart, because people have a tendency when they hear the word healthy eating, they're like, oh, is it really going to be even good? Is it worth it? So just making some smarter choices so that you can have more energy, feel stronger, because when we tend to eat not as healthy, our energy stores usually are decreased. and we're just not feeling as strong because we're not feeling as healthy. So, but it's healthy is one of those words that people have a tendency to be like, I know you agree, Lady B.
Well, but it's important to be healthy. We get it. And we just have to change our mindset about how we look at it. So I'm on board. Healthy
Yeah.
it is.
And one of those things I do try to with people is ditch the food rules. Don't look at it as bad and good, and look at the nutritional value of it. What is it going to give you? And there's always a trade off. So ditch the is this bad? Is this good? Try to just look at it as a nutritional value, and you're doing a trade off, and it helps remove the guilt of like eating bad. And so just try to look at it as like a scale, rather than good and bad, because it's everything has nutritional value. It's just some has a higher nutritional value than others. So, and I think that tends to help people. And if you're going into this holiday season feeling very overwhelmed with trying to make some smarter choices, just pick one thing that I'm going to give you today and just focus on that one thing. And then after you get that down, then you can try to pick up on some other good habits. But trying to adopt a lot of healthy or smarter habits is challenging at first. And so just pick one, nail it, and then just start to add in other smart habits that you want to incorporate into your everyday eating. Because I think that will help you feel less overwhelmed. So, where do we start? I'm going to say be choosy about what you eat. Don't eat everything. So when you walk into an event or a party or a get together, kind of get the lay of the land. Kind of do, get a walk around, see if it's buffet style or if it's being plated. It'll be a little different. Most parties are more of like a buffet or grazing atmosphere. So just kind of get the lay of the land, kind of get everything that's being offered. Because if you just start at the beginning and then you go, it's going to be a little more challenging to be choosy. So be choosy. Don't pick everything. If you're going to pick everything, pick very small portions of everything, and when it's challenging is when the plates that are offered are like platter plates, because then you can fill that plate up. So be cognizant of the size of plate that you have that you're being, that you're being loading food onto, unless it's, sometimes you'll start out at a party and they'll have hors d'oeuvres walking around, if it's one of the higher end parties. And so be choosy about those. Wait till the food comes to you and look at it and decide, do I want to cash in on that or not? But let the food come to you if it's one of those kinds of get-togethers or parties. So be choosy. And then when it is a buffet style and you filled your plate, but you didn't fill it, and you think you want seconds, I'm going to encourage you to give yourself 10 minutes before you go back for seconds. Sip on some water, have some good conversation, let that food settle, let your brain absorb what you just consumed, and then decide if you really want seconds. Because there's been times even for me where I've been at an event and I'm like, ooh, this all looks so good. And I'll fill my plate and eat. And I'm like, I think I could do more. And I'll go right back and get another plate of food. And it's not always the best thing, because once I finish that second plate of food, I'm like, oh, I totally overdid it. You're
I
shaking your
understand.
head.
I think we've all been there.
It's easy to do. It really is. So if you've been really responsible with not overfilling your first plate, then just give yourself 10 minutes. Just drink some water or iced tea or whatever you're choosing to drink. If it's an alcoholic beverage, that's on my next tip, is for every alcoholic beverage you drink a full glass of water, at least 8 ounces. So balance out your alcohol with water. And that's for a variety of reasons. One is just to keep it in check. And the other is alcohol is empty calories. It just really is. I know it's nice to have libations, but just I'm going to encourage you to drink a glass of water for every glass of, wine or cocktail or whatever your drink of choice is, a beer or whatever. So make sure you're drinking water in between your alcoholic beverages. But yeah, so that's tip number 3 is just manage your alcohol, because it's for a variety of reasons. I don't even need to go into it, but a lot of it is just because it's empty calories and it helps slow down the whole process. Um, but yeah, make sure you're sipping on something constantly because that'll help you not overeat. The next thing is also about alcohol. Do not drink alcohol on an empty stomach. It's just not a good idea. You don't feel as good. You have a tendency to drink more. Then all of a sudden you're trying to catch up, being like, I got to get some food in my system. I've drank too much. And then you kind of have a tendency to overeat even at that point. So just don't ever drink on an empty stomach. Get some food in your stomach first before you have an alcoholic beverage. It's just a smarter way to go. It's much easier to manage.
So
All right.
let me ask you a question about that. I don't drink alcohol, but I like sugary drinks, I suppose. So is it just as important to be mindful of the sugar intake from beverages that I might drink?
Absolutely. When you say sugary beverages, is it like lemonade? Is it soda? Is it
Yes,
yes,
exactly.
all of them?
Exactly.
Yes.
I like lemonade, raspberry lemonade, any kind of fun lemonade, or yeah, I do. I really like lemonades. And I don't mind Crystal Light sometime, but I guess I think that if you drink a lot of sugar, you can mess with your blood sugar level too. So we need to be mindful of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Manage those sugary drinks. Really, and same thing. Put some water in there in between. My brother loves Dr. Pepper. I mean, loves it. He would drink that all the time. But I'm like, dude, you got to put in a bottle of water in between that bottle of Dr. Pepper. And so I said, and so we got to the point too where he was drinking too much of it. And I was like, you got to drink 2 bottles of water for every Dr. Pepper.
Oh, wow.
And it's good to at least have a 1-for-1. So yeah, if you're drinking a nice, yummy lemonade, enjoy it. And then have a glass of water and then go back to it. And you'll find that it actually tastes better when you have the water in between. It because otherwise it just gets to be too much. So definitely, even with sugary drinks, same thing. Mix in that water in between. Absolutely. The next tip I have for you is don't go to an event or a party famished, thinking, there's gonna be a lot of great food there. You have no idea what food's gonna be there unless it's a potluck and you're bringing your dish. So just don't go to a party famished. Like give yourself an appetizer at home so that you can have some control over what you're eating. If you're very much into protein, like myself, I usually make sure I get my protein in me before I go because I have no idea what kind of protein they're gonna have. And that's a priority for me. So I always eat my protein before I go. Because then if I get extra protein at the party, that's a bonus. I know I'm going to get fat and sugar and carbs. That's a guaranteed. Always. Every party has those things, but not
Right.
every party has the protein of my choice. So that's how I manage, making sure that I don't go super hungry, but also I'm getting in what's important to me. So don't go to a party famished because you have a tendency to just overeat. So that's my next tip. So the next one is I call it put on your dancing shoes. Every party has music, but not everyone likes to dance. I get that. So go for a walk. But I think dancing is so fun. And when people actually break out of their shell and move a little, they feel so much happier. There's more smiles, there's more laughing. Might be laughing at the style of dancing, might just be laughing in general. But put on your dancing shoes and move around, walk between, if it's a dinner party, go for a walk or get your groove on between dinner and dessert. It'll make you feel so much better. You have a tendency to eat less, believe it or not. And it's a bonus because then you've also burned some extra calories moving your body. And so you can eat a little guilt-free even. But yeah, move around. And like I said, I would encourage dancing at any event. It's good. People laugh. They have fun. Wouldn't you agree? I could see you being a
Absolutely.
dancer.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. I think that it's a lot of fun and it's helpful, like you say, all along the way for exercise. or the energy. You can become really lethargic at some of these parties after your blood sugar changes, and your highs and the lows and the alcohol and the whatever. So I think it's a great way to kind of keep you level headed too.
Right. And we're in the season where people are also decorating outside. So you could even go for a neighborhood walk and encourage the people at the party to go with you. Be like, hey, I'm going to go get some steps in right now between dinner and make some room for dessert. I mean, even though we're not really making room, it just makes us feel better. But encourage people to go for a walk and see the neighborhood lights, before you settle into dessert. And I always find conversations to be a little more engaging when we're moving our bodies. I don't know why, but I just find it to be much more pleasant. So if you're not into dancing, you don't want to dance, encourage people to go for a walk with you and go see what lights are in the neighborhood. Move that body is what I'm trying to tell you to do. So my next tip is to opt for homemade versus processed. Being aware of what's in your food and what you're eating is really, really critical, because highly processed foods, there's so many chemicals and things that you just don't know what you're consuming. So I'm going to encourage you to, if you're doing a potluck and you're bringing something, make something. Don't just go buy it. And that way you're aware of what's in it and you're encouraging other people to make some smarter choices. And if you're at an event where you can tell stuff is packaged, I would really encourage you to pass over it and just try to look for things that are homemade. It's going to be better for you. You'll be able to manage it better in your system. I find that people have more upset stomachs when they're eating highly processed foods. So, because there's just so much stuff in it that really isn't designed to be in our bodies. So I'm going to encourage you to do homemade versus processed. The next tip I have for you is to do, and I already kind of said it, but manage your portion controls, and if there's an option for you to choose a smaller plate, I'll encourage you to do a smaller plate. It makes you feel like you're eating more when that smaller plate is full. But if you don't have a choice on plate size, just manage your, kind of imagine your fist and don't do anything bigger than your fist. Like, it's really unnecessary. We don't need to be having things that are, because if you're filling your plate up with, let's just say, Thanksgiving's coming up and we were just talking about that. So say you're doing a traditional, Thanksgiving, and you've got your turkey, your stuffing, your mashed potatoes with the gravy, and then you got corn, and then you have who knows what else, a salad, hopefully, so you can get some color in there. Think about if you're doing a fist size for all of that, that's a lot of food that's going into your stomach. So if you're choosing a lot of different things, go smaller than your fist, because it's just manage
So
your
the
portion.
fist represents each of the items.
If you're doing each of those, that's what I'm saying, is like, if you're choosing like 6 different things to have on your plate, I would do half a fist. Our stomachs aren't that big. They stretch, they do. But really it's, you got to think about, and our stomachs are not that large. That's why it's really easy to get stuffed very quickly. So, and if you're going to a party famished, like, that's the other thing, is like, you're going to want to have a fist size of everything. And you're just not going to feel good. You're going to feel super lethargic when you're done. And so it's just, portion control is really, really important. But then again, if you're doing this like once a year and you want to feel gluttonous, go for it. Do it. But if you're looking at the holiday season and you're having to manage multiple events and parties and get-togethers, it can be stressful. But if we're just talking like a one-off Thanksgiving, go for it. Be gluttonous. One day is not going to hurt you. But this is more about people that are having to, manage multiple events and parties, and it can be overwhelming, because if you're doing that every weekend between now and the end of the year, you get to January and you're like, oh, where is the gym? And people don't feel good, and that's why there's so many people that like start at the gym in January. And so it's one of those things where people just have a hard time managing multiple events, and they start to feel like this does not feel good. So if you're going to a lot of events, just know going into it, you don't have to eat everything every time. You're there to socialize. Let your focus be social connections and building new friendships, strengthening old friendships, and that be the focus rather than the food. And the other tip I have for you is don't hang out by the food. If it's a buffet style, people have a tendency to gravitate and hang out in the kitchen. It's even my family get-togethers. For some reason, we're always hanging out in the kitchen, but get away from the food. And that's why it's nice to go for a walk or put some music on and dance or play a board game, play a card game. But get away from the food. Let it be about the social connection rather than it being just about the food. Get-togethers tend to be food focus, and it should be people focus. And food is just there to be a filler. So my last tip for you is always, what do you want to say, Lady B?
I just wanted to say that about being around the food, and this is going to sound weird, but I'm going to say it anyway. Many times I'll hang around the food, not because I plan to go back, but I want to see people coughing all over it.
Oh,
I'm like, I'm going to stay away from this, and I'm going to stay away from sometimes then it becomes less appetizing, especially when it's a buffet. I'm like, ugh.
oh,
So, isn't that
yeah. Oh, yeah. The moment I see someone like dips, I don't do dips. I just don't, unless there's a spoon in it and I've been standing there guarding it. But even people don't use a spoon to put their dip on their plate. And I can't do dips. I I just
I'm
can't.
with you.
If I'm not standing there watching it the entire time, making sure no one's double dipping, I I just can't. And even
So I'm not
before,
alone. I'm not alone. Okay.
girl, you're not. Buffet style parties where I don't know people, I rarely eat. I do. I am one of those people where I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. And I'm just going to be here to socialize and have a good time. And I'll find something that I can eat. If it's potluck, I'm usually eating my own dish, but that's me. I'm a bit of a control freak and I'm okay with that. I'll be the first to admit, hi, I'm SheriAnne. I'm a control freak and I'm okay.
Good for you. Know thyself. Good for
Yeah.
you.
That's why I eat before I go. I mean, I love events, and I love socializing. But that I've been that way my entire life. Like food's never I enjoy food. You and I've had this conversation, I think. I enjoy food, but I don't like enjoy food. Like I eat because I'm supposed to. I eat because it's for sustainability, to eat, to sustain my body. But I'm not emotionally connected to food.
That's great. That's great. I like textures and the different layers of stuff. It becomes an art almost for me. So I guess I'm attached.
And that's totally okay. Like nothing's right, nothing's wrong, and so it's just who you are and know yourself. Going to these events will help you manage it, not feel overwhelmed, not be stressed. Just choose your focus where you want it to be. And if you want your focus on the food, that's totally fine. If you can manage it well and not beat yourself up. What happens is people tend to feel guilt for being gluttonous. And it's like, no, be intentional. If you're going to be gluttonous and just
Mhm.
know it. And then work out, after the fact, make sure you got you're doing your 30 minutes of walking or whatever you choose to do for exercise, but just be intentional and put your focus where you want it to put it. And so for me, it's the social connections. I always love building new connections and strengthening old connections. And so that's, that's my focus.
And that's great. And I don't know that food is necessarily my focus, although I like good food for sure. But if I'm going to eat someplace, I want to enjoy it. And for me, it's part of the memory making too. I can remember what I had at a certain time or a place and how that connected to the actual event or something. So it becomes part of the whole memory for me.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yes, music and food do that for people. When things are, there's senses involved. Yeah, it solidifies that memory even more. So I totally get that. So my last tip, because it's a good one, is if you are wanting to manage your eating, take some mints or gum with you. And when you're done, you're done. Put the mint in your mouth, put the gum in your mouth, because mint actually does help suppress our appetite, but it also just kind of puts a bow on the meal and you're like, I'm done. And it gives you that fresh breath feeling. And I mean, how many times have you offered something to someone and they're like, oh, I just put a piece of gum in my mouth. They're like, thanks though.
Mhm.
And so it's just it's a closure for people. Like, so once you're done and you know it, put that gum or that mint in your mouth and you're done. And it's a nice way of just being like, nope, I'm done. I'm not going to put anything else in. Because it's, I don't know why. It's like you could spit that gum out and get another piece of gum. You could.
We don't want to. We're not going to waste that piece, especially when it's new.
But people don't. When have you ever seen someone like spit a new piece of gum out to go ahead and try something? It's super rare. So
Right.
so take that gum with you. It'll help you. It'll help you just put a nice bow on the meal and the event and be like, okay, I'm done eating.
Right.
But yeah,
Excellent.
those are my tips. And so it just comes back, it circles back around to just paying attention to what matters most to you. Be intentional. It'll help manage the stress and navigate all of the parties that you're attending. And if you're not attending a lot, these are still great tips because we are entering into a 5 to 7 week window where a lot is happening around food.
Then do we need to be mindful, or maybe there's a way that we can change our mindset a bit or to do something to kind of prepare us for it? Do you think?
Oh, well, that's what I'm saying. Be intentional. Like if you're being intentional gives you preparation. So, because if you're going in with no intentions of what you're going to be, how you're going to manage your eating, or if you're wanting to have your focus be on social connections, then that's where you tend to like fall off the wagon, so to speak, and not make good choices. So, being intentional will help you make good choices and feel prepared going in.
Do I need to make a list, if you will, to say I'm only going to eat X amount of this or that or the other? I mean,
If that helps
wh-
you, absolutely. A lot of people do have a tendency to be more successful if they're writing it down because then they're going to hold themselves more accountable to it. Because once you write it, not only have you thought it, you've written it, and now you've seen it. And so when we write things, it's definitely more cemented into our accountability.
all
So yeah.
right. I do agree with eating something before you go so that you're not just famished when you get there, because sometimes the food can just look so good, just visually, like, ooh, I want to taste that. Or again, into the texture, it looks good, or it looks like they have a lot of different flavors. Let me just try this. And whether that's good for us or not, don't know for sure. But being ready for it, like you say, being intentional, preparing yourself before you go, but still wanting to have fun. See, there's this dichotomy there. I want to have fun, but I've got to watch what I'm eating, or else it's not going to serve me well.
Well,
There's that too. So there can be a little anxiety.
and that's where I encourage people to look at it like a scale, like in the sense of everything has a nutritional value, and so it's just monitor that scale. Nothing's good, nothing's bad. It's just a scale. Some are higher on the scale for nutritional value, some are lower. So that will help remove anxiety because it helps remove the guilt as well. Because when people have a tendency to be eating bad foods, that creates
Mhm.
guilt and that creates anxiety. And the anxiety actually comes into play when people are living into the future. They're like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? Well, just go in knowing, like, I'm going to have two desserts. I want to try two, or I'm going to try a bite of all of them. Like, just be intentional with it. And that way you can be like, okay, it'll be much more manageable, we
I
think.
guess we have some things to try. I'm hopeful we're going to see what happens with some of this. I think so. You don't want to think too much about it, because I think then it changes the experience.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Don't overthink it.
not for
Yeah. It's not the
that may be it.
overthinking it.
Yeah, that may be it.
Yeah. Just go in with, some guidelines for yourself. That's what I was saying earlier. If you're worried about it, just pick one thing. Pick one thing that you want to focus on. And if that's the desserts, like I'm going to manage my desserts. Everything else is free game. Or I'm going to manage making sure that I get my proteins in. Like just find something that you want to focus on, or it could be managing your alcohol. Like people have a tendency to overdrink at get-togethers. Be like, I'm going to allow myself one alcoholic beverage and that's it, or one sweet beverage. So just pick one thing if you're feeling like a lot of anxiety going into these events. Just pick one thing that you want to focus on. It's and don't overthink it. It's not the end of the world. And if you
Sounds
make bad
great. Well,
choices, you make bad choices. We can fix those.
absolutely. Well, I hope that we all make some good choices based on the tips that you have given us today. Really appreciate what you've said. And just think about some of the other lessons that Coach has shared with us over, the last several months about our thinking, about habits and how we could do things a little differently. And if we begin to utilize some of those things that she's already shared with us, I bet that this holiday will be a great holiday for us too. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for being with us. We look forward to seeing you next month. Until then, take care and God bless.